Hello, welcome to the Chicago Kotlin user group meetup, online meetup. This is Amanda Hinchman Dominguez, and today we have Louis CAD, Kotlin GDE, and a vital member of the Kotlin community. Welcome to the show, Louis.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you on. For those who might not know or have had the pleasure of meeting you or chatting with you online or interacting with you in other ways, please tell us, who is Louis CAD?
Okay, Louis CAD is like me. CAD is the acronym of my full name, which is way too long and way too hard for most non-French people to pronounce. So I just went with the acronym, even though I don't like acronyms in programming. And that's the name I use for developer stuff and for international stuff, basically. And developers, I found myself interacting with people way beyond France, just thanks to internet. And I really fell in love with Kotlin as I was using this name. And yeah, so I don't know. It's tough to describe yourself. It's really really tough. But
Yeah.
yeah, I used Kotlin since 2016, and I found many issues on the way. I tried experimental stuff, some lucky coroutines, some less lucky, multi-platform, but now it's stable. But yeah, that led to many interactions with the community, I would say. And when I say the community, I mean other folks doing Kotlin, be it Android or not, and JetBrains, and also Google to some extent.
Yeah, it's been an interesting arrangement, especially since Google has officially adopted Kotlin. It's been some time now. There's been a good amount of success on it. I'm surprised to hear that you've been in the Kotlin scene since 2016. That's definitely. I think I started roughly, I want to say 2017, 2018. So you've been around for a while. And I'm sure many viewers can share. Everyone's on their own journey. I can say that I discovered like the Kotlin Slack chat quite by accident. I think I found it from Twitter. Then I got on, and it was really great because before I was like really afraid to participate in online communities. I didn't think I was good enough for open source stuff like that. But yeah, you go on this chat, there's so many channels, and I did Tornado FX. That was like kind of my first love in Kotlin. And I would like ask a question, and 20 people from all around the world would hop in to help out. And it was just incredible. And so I stayed in the Tornado FX community within Kotlin for a little bit, and I finally started meeting people face to face. I ended up moving to Chicago because I heard there was a Kotlin scene here. There was like 16 people at the time, and we all wanted to do Kotlin at work. And years later, we're now doing Kotlin at work. It's great. So yeah, I think everyone has that journey. Maybe some people haven't met people face to face yet. I wanted to talk about your journey from presumably online to face to face. I do remember seeing your name like in the chats, and that you were like an active member. And I'm interested in hearing more about like kind of like your beginnings with some of this, and your involvement. And I'm sure like people are like, oh, like who is this guy? It's there. Honestly, there was only a handful of people at the time, so it just felt like a small town. Yeah, share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it all started on Google Plus, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if people recall about Google Plus. Well, that was supposed to be a Facebook competitor, but because of several marketing
Google
failures,
Plus.
maybe.
This
Uh,
was this was one of the iterations, right, of the suite.
Sorry, the
Can
iteration.
you remind us? Yeah, remind us what Google Plus was, because it's no
Yeah,
longer around, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been closed for what I believe is a really bad reason, but at least the public version was like not convincing at all to me. It was like, oh, you can access some private, kind of like slightly private user data, but not so much. And because of that, like they are closing the entire Google Plus. Like, what? You can just make that data inaccessible and keep everything else around. Like, it's not like Facebook. Oh, we had a data breach. No, we are closing Facebook. No, they are not doing that. so,
Yeah.
so I think it was for some other reason, but basically the way Google Plus started made it that it was mostly like geeks, I think, on the platform, and it's never really caught the interest of the more general public. Probably it was a bit too early. Now more people are more have a more extensive geek side, I would say. So I think people are there's been a time where people were less afraid to try new stuff, but Google was a bit too early and their marketing didn't really speak. I believe that's just personal opinion. But anyway, so there was a thing named communities, which is kind of like Facebook groups on Google Plus, and there was an official Android developers thing there. Maybe because before it was just like the blog post, the Android developers blog post, which I landed on because I was an Android developer since 2014 and I just
Okay.
needed to stay up to date. And so then there was this Google Plus community, but I was mostly passive. Sometimes I would answer some posts, but I didn't post much myself. Um, and then there was GitHub, of course. Sometimes I would use some libraries, and then I would find a bug, and then at some point I would think of an idea to fix the bug or to just ask when is it going to be fixed. I'm kidding. I don't know. Probably I started like that. Oh, I spot a typo in the README, and I send a PR to fix the README. That
Amazing.
was my first interactions with other developers that were somewhere, but not in my office. and and then there was Twitter that
Oh yeah.
also started to have a bunch of folks. And the interesting with Twitter is that if you follow the right people that were sharing some of their knowledge, sometimes it would just be like, "Hey, I made a new blog post," or "Hey, there's just this new thing," and I follow people like, I don't know, for example, Huyen Ti Dao. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Oh
her name
yeah.
right.
Wayne Tao,
Uh,
amazing woman.
yeah,
One of my role
there was
models.
Antonio Liva, there was Jake Wharton, of course,
Of course.
and a bunch of other folks. At the time, most of them were American, some Indian, and a few Europeans. Not a lot, but some. And yeah, that was this. And then I learned about Android makers, which was like kind of a DroidCon that was happening in Paris, which is like 1 hour by train from where I'm living. I'm not in Paris. I'm in far away from that, but the train is fast. So yeah. Anyway, I was like, okay, maybe I can get to this conference, and I think that was in 2016 actually.
Wow, what a
When-
journey. It just went online. I spent time on Twitter as well. I don't use Twitter anymore, but it was also my gateway for kind of like it was like kind of getting dunked in water with like these are the people you need to know if you want to be part of the community. Not that you like need to know certain people or anything like that, but it was an amazing platform for getting that quick exposure. This sounds like a really magical story. You went on it, you hopped on a train and you went to Android makers, and how was that?
well, it was nice. I was already seeing some talks online, but now I got to meet some other folks that were actually doing Android because in my city there were very few Android developers. I think I knew
Mm,
like two, but they were busy with life and work, so I would never see them. So no one to chat with. In my company, I was the only real Android developer. The other
yeah.
ones were like, you don't even want to name the technologies developers, and that still try to do mobile apps. And I'm not even talking about JavaScript. It's something worse. But anyway, uh, and yeah, so that was my first entry into offline. But it was, I don't know. I don't think I spoke to a lot of people, but to me it was exactly the same as online. Just like
Mhm.
this time the person felt more real, but the
Because they're in
person
your
didn't.
face, yeah.
But I knew that online the people were actual people as well.
Yeah.
um
Did you meet
yeah.
anyone that like you knew online that you met in person? Oh, I apologize. That's my dog. I'll mute myself. Did did you meet anyone online that you met in person at like Android Makers or maybe some of the other events you've gone to?
I think I missed a word, but I didn't miss the box. And can you say it again, please?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, you said that you met people like in person at Android Makers. Did you recognize anybody that you like have been talking to online
Uh,
from the Kotlin community that you met there?
so the Kotlin community know that there was no such thing at that time.
Oh, at the time it was just like
I mean,
Java and Android.
it existed, but it was before I started to do Kotlin. Some people, some quiet people, were already trying Kotlin before 1.0, but
Wow.
1.0
Yeah.
happened in February. So I think it was after Android Makers, so it was already there. But the 1.0 didn't work on Android. Only 1.0 done something was working.
Wow.
It was like a very silly bug, but anyway, so they just fix it, and then it opens the floodgates. And previous version prior to 1.0 worked on Android, so it was like, oh, there's this slight regression. Oh, sorry, we are JetBrains, we are not doing Android at first. But of course, I learned a lot about Android since then.
Okay, so you got in first in the Android community.
Exactly.
So that was kind of your first community.
Yes.
And after this bug with Kotlin 1.0 got fixed, that's when things started opening up for Kotlin, especially in the Android community. I guess what I'm curious to know is like, how did that look different to you in person? Like, what felt different between that point in time when you first joined the Android community and the Android makers and these other in-person events, and then Kotlin started opening up? What do you remember most about that time period?
So what I remember is that I think mid 2016, I was getting more and more fed up by how much effort was needed to be able to do something working well. I liked reliable code. I also needed it for the product that I was working on, because the product that I was working on was an app for lone workers. So like if you work, you're alone, and maybe you are somewhere no coworker and no customers can see you, no one can see you. If something bad happens, maybe you fall out of a ladder, maybe there's something else, some kind of those kind of blue collars, but
Oh my
that
gosh.
sometimes
Yeah,
work
like there was an
alone.
accident. Yeah.
Yeah, so my app was here to check that the person was still moving, and if it was no longer moving,
Oh my
it would
goodness.
send an alert. And so that was like something that some
That's
companies
like life
need for
saving.
their workers.
Yeah. Oh my
And
goodness. That's yeah.
so also because of the context, and also my personal taste, which was I don't like bugs. I was saying that it required a lot of effort to avoid bugs, and I'm not just talking about null pointer exception.
Okay.
uh, and so I was kind of thinking, okay, there's a lot of cool things we can do with software, and I want to realize maybe some ideas, or maybe just one. And probably I want to lead projects in the near future, uh, and have other people, more people also, to work on the code part. And yeah, in my mind, I was slowly starting to like escape. Maybe not now, but like yeah, leave being a developer full time. And then Kotlin happened, and to me it was like yes, yes, yes.
Oh my gosh.
So many things that were complex, there was a way to hide it in a way that was not really hidden. It was not magic, it was never magic, but it just made all the kind of silly limitations, which you can explain those limitations. Usually it's history
Yeah.
reason, but it just fixed so many hurdles that it opened new ways, and that's when I was earlier last year. I had just started to make libraries. So it was some Android libraries, and then I met Kotlin like 3 months after or something. I started to
Okay.
use it, and now I was seeing a lot more stuff that I could do to make my life easier as an Android developer, and hopefully other folks. So that Kotlin arrived at the perfect time for me, where I was courageous enough to feel like making a public library,
Okay. Yeah.
but probably not courageous enough to do it all in Java. And then Kotlin arrived.
Understandable. Well, that's a story I think a lot of us can relate to. Of course, there are some lucky folks who got into programming and like Kotlin was their first language. And I was I guess kind of an ASP.NET developer for a little bit, Ruby on Rails too. And I was also considering like I don't know if this career is for me. It felt like I was fighting. Like you're setting out to complete this task, or you're trying to do this and that. You're trying to make that application for keeping track of like yard workers and their activities. And I found myself fighting like codes and frameworks more than I was just coding. And I felt similar, like kind of like this snap when Kotlin came around. It just felt like, I mean, they had all these safeguarding practices. It's not just a null pointer exception, but they had just these good functional properties that was a bit fluid. You can make it as functional or as object oriented as you wanted. There was less noise. And I could just start coding. Like it wasn't a fight to code. I like the community a lot, and yeah, it changed the trajectory. Going into Kotlin, or the appearance of Kotlin in the world, really changed my trajectory of my future in the coding world. So before I know you mentioned briefly, oh my gosh, there was like a point that you started talking about. Did not want to lose that, but the ADHD in me has been looking at the items in your room, which is all Kotlin themed. I'm gonna derail just a little bit. What is all that? I do see some Kotlin logos. I see a fun looking truck. Yeah, tell me more about all this.
This
Are
is made
you?
out of Lego Technic. This is something I have been loving as a child, doing Lego
Oh,
Technic.
that's so lovely.
I started Lego Technic without any manual. Unfortunately, I just had something mostly built, and it was missing, of course, a few key parts, so I had to do things on my own. This one is the 3D version, you see. Lego Technic.
Wow.
Anyway, so of
Yeah,
course you can tell that I love Kotlin.
yeah. It's
uh,
lovely. I love it. Do they
and
light up?
I'm not really into trucks, but yeah,
It looks like you made that.
that one.
Is it
Um,
mechanical? Does it run on its own?
it's not electric. Well, no, it is electric actually, and but no, it cannot like move, but it can like handle things. It has like I don't know how you
Oh
call that in
yeah.
English.
Maybe
It's
like
kind
a
of like a van.
crane. I think it's a crane.
Yeah,
You know what? I
exactly.
don't know my truck parts too well.
Yeah, so
Perhaps it's a crane. Yeah.
it's actually a Mercedes. I can probably remove the sign here. But it's not sponsored by Mercedes. This recording is not sponsored. And yeah, it's pneumatic. So here it's like a pneumatic thing that moves the crane. So like something electric pumps air, and then it flows into the pipes, flexible
Yeah.
pipes, and then it moves the thing. But yeah, it's just
Wow.
the smallest thing that I have built in Lego Technic. No, I'm not, maybe not exactly, but the one that looks finished. But I have other stuff. Yeah, anyway, that's it.
Well, it looks lovely. I'm
Do
glad
you
that
want
we had a.
me? Do you want me to remove that to satisfy your ADHD side?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one time. Just one time. We got a little time, so yeah,
Should
that'd
I
be
remove
great. Yeah, yeah.
it? Okay.
Oh, Is that an Android? Yes, that's an
Oh yeah, yeah.
Android guy at the yeah. Oh, so cute. I love that. So cool. Oh my goodness. This is an
And
incredible truck.
on my desk, which is a bit busy at the moment, there's other cool ones.
Oh, that's a good
This
one.
one
I
has
have
a skateboard. Sorry, I should bring the skateboard.
Is that like a little beret for the Android? I'm so tickled. And he has like the Supreme shirt, but it's Android instead of Supreme. Incredible. Okay.
Should I put
This
it
is
back or should I remove it from the background?
whichever feels more convenient for you for the recording. If it feels like clunky to put it back, but don't feel rushed. If it feels fine to put it back, go ahead. But thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so tickled. I do love seeing those little Android guys everywhere. I do love that. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. The ADHD's curiosity has been satisfied. With that said, that's an incredible story that you share. I didn't realize that you had a long-standing participation in Android makers, which makes sense. You're an Android developer. And correct me if I'm wrong, even today, you're a moderator for the Kotlin community. Is that right? Like online in some
For the
spaces?
Kotlin Slack, but I'm not
Okay.
doing much because there are other moderators which are more
Of course.
effective, I would say.
Of course.
And fun fact, officially, I was assigned to be the moderator of the Android channel in the Kotlin Slack, which is wide, but I never requested that. So
Oh,
and it's like not possible. It's a full-time job to moderate that.
yes.
So
It
for
takes
multiple
multiple
reasons.
people.
One of the reasons is that Google never made an open community for Android developers to speak about, so that
Yeah.
every time someone has an issue, and because they are using Kotlin, they ask any even mostly non-Kotlin related problems, and it's just too much. It's like live Stack Overflow. It's overwhelming. But yeah,
Wow.
anyway.
Oh, interesting. I mean, no, that is I don't know if I can provide too much commentary. All I got to say, it's very interesting. I'll have to think on that a little bit, but it kind of does make sense that there's not really a lot of places for them to speak live. Like it's going to be, I mean, they found the Slack chat. People there are already pretty friendly. I can kind of see it. I'm sure there's some users who use it internally and they kind of help each other. I'm sure that's what they do. But very interesting. In speaking of which, I know you talked about like you did mention a few things around different ways to participate in the Kotlin community, and with your extensive knowledge on working with the open source community, how should people participate in the Kotlin community?
First, I would say I don't know because it really depends on what works the best for them.
That's a good answer.
So yeah, as usual, it depends. Personally, my first participation was just sharing my knowledge about coroutines and sharing my love about coroutines. So like there was an Android French speaking Slack for Android developers where I would just say coroutines are awesome. First, Kotlin is awesome because I mean,
Love
like
that.
whenever someone had an issue that was easy to solve with Kotlin, I would just say, okay, you can solve this. And, oh yeah, it's using Kotlin by the way. And yeah, I would just talk about that. And then when I started using coroutines, which was in 2017, after it clicked, after I got what it was exactly for, then I was chatting about that. And then there was the Kotlin Slack. I think it was in late 2016 that it was open or something like that. And there was a coroutines channel after coroutines were public, and there I answered many questions for maybe 1 or 2 years. Now other people are doing it way faster than I do because more people know coroutines well. But not always. Sometimes I still find myself like giving the exact correct answer after like a thread of 30 or 60 messages.
Yeah, you know
Um,
what? used coroutines for a while and you're like, oh, I know it. And then after a while, I actually just read up some articles. I'm going to start a series of basics because I've been working with it and I'm like, wait, do I know coroutines? I even helped write a book on it. But no, I mean, sometimes you think you get threading, concurrency, coroutines, and then after a while, you just kind of got to go back and ask yourself. How many years
Yeah.
have you been using coroutines?
Sorry.
How many years have you been using coroutines for?
So, since 2017, so that's been 7 years.
Okay. Since it first came out, I was hesitant to
Yeah.
start using it for at least another year or two. I was like intimidated.
Yeah, to
Um,
me, it took like few months still, because the first example that I recall Roman was showing when the Kotlin 1.1 was released didn't make so much sense to me. I think they announced it like it was the first Kotlin Conf in San Francisco,
mhm.
the first and only time it so far that it was in America, and yeah, he was showing something like launching 100,000 coroutines, and I was like, okay, so you cannot do that with thread, but you can with coroutines, but why? To me,
Yeah.
it's not like, okay, you can launch 100,000 things. It was not like, oh, it's fixing my issue, I could not launch 100,000 things. Of course, for backend developers, I think it made much more sense, because it means that you can run many more concurrent tasks and serve many more users at once, while still having like parallel things that look like they are sequential. But for as an Android developer, it didn't click just yet. And for sure, there was no integrations with Android. I mean, there was one, just like you could dispatch on the main thread, but that was the only thing there. And there was no like thing that automatically cancels the coroutines when you leave the activity. There was no integration with the life cycles. So you had to do it yourself. It was not very hard. You launch a coroutine and create, you cancel it in on destroy. But there were other ways to do that, which at some point I ended up sharing, because I wrote some extension that just made the world it for you, integration with life cycles from Android X. But yeah. Sorry, I think I lost my train of thought.
You know what?
Probably some
It
asynchronous
happens.
issue, some concurrency issue in my
We're
head.
talking about asynchronous stuff, and you know what? Sometimes that happens in real life speeches too. And
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? It's okay. I also kind of like forgot how we got to this point, but no, it's quite all right. I know we started getting into coroutines. The original question was how should people participate in the
Yeah.
community? So
Yeah.
far we talked about participating in Slack chats. We also talked about code contributions, and I actually like some of the examples that you brought up because there are some that are like really friendly for beginners. Like, oh, I spotted a typo. I wanted to create an extension for others to use. I think these are really great ways to start getting into it. I believe you've also, let's see, oh, you did mention another one, not specifically for Kotlin, but you talked about how people can submit issues. Is there a Kotlin equivalent for submitting issues?
Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to touch on first, is that there's the layer. Of course, you can submit issue for Kotlin, and I will talk about that. But there's like the low hanging fruit when
Mhm.
you are a Kotlin developer, especially if you are a beginner. Sometimes it's just about like, that this thing can be fixed. You submit a pull request, or that this question you can answer. You answer that, or you have a specific question which might uncover a bug or not. But you just talk to people when it makes sense regarding what you need or what you're doing or where you are while you are browsing on the web. So just take the lowest hanging fruit to you. I think that's a great way to just like learn. You never, there's no like standard path. So
Yeah,
go where things take you, and
where things feel most comfortable. Lowest hanging fruit. I think that is a great way to do it.
yeah. And the other thing is that I think what is the most relevant or the most helpful to do in the Kotlin community today is not the same as it was yesterday. And I'm not
Mm.
talking about yesterday, like the day before this recording, but I'm talking about like back in
5 years
2016,
ago. Yeah,
then
yeah.
2017. So, for example, in 2016, when Kotlin 1.0 was out, and then Android developers started to use it and love it, some wrote some articles. For example, my how can I say that, the person that helped me the most to grasp, okay, I really need to look into Kotlin, was Antonio Liva, who is Spanish, I
Ah,
think, and
yes, I
he
believe.
made a little series of blog posts that just show tiny things about, okay, this thing that is slightly annoying or hard to do in Android, here's how it's made much easier with that little Kotlin extension function. And there you see it looks much nicer, and every time you won't have to rewrite that boilerplate. And so he was
Yeah,
making a bunch of articles over time. And I saw that because some other people retweeted his thing, and then I followed him and I look at the other blog posts, and that was really what I use as a starting point. But
yeah,
now, a lot of those things, uh, you see them if you start a new project in Android Studio, because Android X already has a lot of extensions. These kind of extensions, there's I think the problem now is that there's many information, and what is the most interesting is I would say high quality ones. And by high quality ones, I don't want to say don't publish something unless it's that good. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that if you see a better way to communicate something, or if you see something new or interesting, you can just talk to people about it, or you can write a blog post, or you can, I don't know, there are many ways. And
sure. Yeah,
but you
no,
cannot do all of them. Just see where you see a gap, and you can fill it
yeah,
if you want.
yeah,
And
no,
I think the
this,
most impactful thing is going to SDK vendors, where you see an SDK that you want to use into your project, or a library that maybe supports Java, Ruby, but not Kotlin, and especially not Kotlin multi-platform. You can
mhm,
just ask for that to change. And there are already some companies that went to support Kotlin multi-platform. Kotlin is slowly getting there, but Firebase, for example, is not
yeah.
supporting KMP yet. There's a request
Ooh,
now, which
ooh,
is
okay.
in the top three of the requests for Firebase from the community. And I made sure that it's in the top three because it was not there at all. But anyway,
Wow,
but Sentry, for example, it's a logging and crash reporting SDK, kind of like Firebase Crashlytics, but a lot better, and also paid. And so that thing has a Kotlin multi-platform SDK, if I'm not mistaken. There's a bunch of other solutions for different things, and the more companies tell, "Hey, we have support for Kotlin, and not just Kotlin, but Kotlin multi-platform," I think the more it helps the community overall, the easiest it's for us long term to do stuff with Kotlin, because
yeah,
now if we want to use that SDK 1 year from now, it's much less code. We don't have to do it twice. We don't have to do it for an Android, an iOS, and a web app. Maybe just one line of code, and it works on all targets, because also Kotlin helps make things simpler. You use coroutines in KMP, it works the same. So everything is synchronous, becomes much easier. So I think it's really like about asking to
yeah.
get Kotlin where it's not yet, and Kotlin
Look where the
multi-platform.
gaps are. Yeah. Well, that I think that's the beauty of open source. There's so much to touch on. I think looking for gaps, asking where you're not sure that there is something that's present that perhaps that you need. I like this idea of building upon each other in a way. The evolution of the Kotlin language kind of reminds me of kind of like linguistics in a way where slowly people start building on it over time. And before we know it, we have shorter solutions. The same way that language might have like slang or new words to describe new things. I think it's a somewhat comparable process. I do like this idea of also writing out like any articles that maybe like it was hard for you to solve. And I actually encourage a lot of people to do this. Like, even if somebody else has written about it before, like you said, maybe there's a slightly better way to do it. And that's how the open source language ends up evolving over time, because we're building on each other's ideas. And it's good to do this with kind of a sense of courage, and the idea like maybe you're hoping that someone can build upon that too. So in terms of asking, I think you mentioned UTrack previously. Is this one of the ways that people can make certain requests online, like not just like on Slack and stuff?
Yeah. So for what I believe today you can do to help Kotlin be more and more supported and easier to use and stuff, and I'm not just saying Kotlin itself, but also the ecosystem. So there's asking Kotlin support to other companies, but also when you see a bug, an issue, or something that you want improved in Kotlin, you can submit an issue for that. And submitting an issue can be either like you have an idea for a feature or you've seen a bug. Like these are two types, but it's the same place. And for Kotlin, there's a very handy shortcut URL, which is kotlin.in/issue. And that's the shortcut that you can type in any web browser, and it takes you directly to your track selected to the Kotlin project. And there you can select the type of, is it a feature or a bug report, feature request or bug report. So you just select one of those two, or I think maybe there are a few other types, and you just use a very good title. Make it as long as needed so that
Wow.
you understand what really is the issue. Maybe not everything. You have the description for the details, but it's you can have a one full line or 2 lines title. That's really helpful because then the UTrack will show them it to JetBrains, and folks from JetBrains actually triage the issues so that they really dispatch it to the right people, and they have very precise states where you can see whether it's been open, which means that someone has looked at it, whether it's in progress, which means that someone is working on it without you having to pay. And yeah, there's a lot of very precise metadata that helps you keep track of
Oh, that's
where
kind of nice.
you're breaking. And so that's something I've used a lot. But my first report was for something like, well, probably, yeah, something that it makes no sense to me today. But my first report, wait, when was it? When was it? I think I can check that. It was 7 years ago. It was in 2016.
2016.
Yeah, so
Wow.
the year I
Okay.
started Kotlin, but not exactly when I started Kotlin. But yeah, as soon as
Okay.
I encountered an issue, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want it to be fixed. And so it's a hurdle. Of course, there are workarounds, but instead of just like chasing workarounds and ended up with a workaround based code base, I
Yeah.
decided to just report an
You went
issues.
right to the source. Out of curiosity, because I actually didn't know that this was an option. I don't think I've used UTrack at work, but I've never used UTrack specifically for submitting issues for Kotlin. Like, I know there's the Keep, which is kind of like a feature request on GitHub. And then another option that people tend to use is going onto the GitHub code project itself and submitting issues there. What would you say is the difference between like submitting an issue on GitHub versus like an issue on UTrack? How do you know?
So
How do you know like where you should submit it? I
yeah,
guess you know. Yeah,
that's a good question. You're right. The first issues I submitted were not on UTrack. They were on GitHub. That were for other projects, probably some from Google or some random project that I've rendered on while surfing the web. So to me, it's about the same. If you do a good title in GitHub issues, it's also helpful. But Kotlin specifically, because it's a complicated project managed by JetBrains, where people are paid to work on.
fair enough.
Uh, they are not using GitHub issues. They are using something more powerful, which is their own tool, UTrack. So you cannot
Okay.
submit issues when it comes to the Kotlin language itself or the support in the IDE, you cannot do that on GitHub. You can only look at the code and submit a pull request. So you need to go to, I think it's, if you go on Kotlin and you look at submitting an issue, if you search, at some point you will probably find the link. But
You'll probably
kotlin.in
find like a
issue,
track somewhere.
all you
Yeah,
need to know.
I see. Okay. So like,
So one other difference is that uTrack has a very powerful search syntax, which is like natural language based, but
okay.
with auto-completion, because it JetBrains, of course, so auto-completion is very important. So that you with that you can really pinpoint what is the exact issue about that. They have so many. It's so well organized for all the metadata, the supported version, whether it's fixed, what is the exact state, who is
Oh
assigned,
yeah.
who reported it, when was it reported, when was it updated, or is it a subtask of another task? You can see that
Yeah.
it's all public. You also have profile pictures, unlike the Google issue tracker, which makes it a lot more
The
human.
Google tracker. Yeah.
And so
Reminds me of
with
like
that,
a
there
form.
are people paid to look at the issue tracker. For Kotlin, what encouraged me to keep submitting issues, and I submitted a lot of issues since then. And it's 261 issues
200?
in the track.
Oh my,
Um,
how many of them
most
have been
of them,
answered?
yeah, most of them on the Kotlin project. But this year I haven't submitting a lot of issues. Probably because I encounter fewer bugs, and sometimes I don't have time to report every single slight
Okay.
little bug that I have. But sometimes I did spend time to report the slight little bugs, and some of them were fixed. And a lot of those issues, not 100% of them, but a fair percentage of them were fixed. And so that really encouraged me. At least they got a reply.
Got fixed.
Sorry?
Like there is a good number of them that ended up getting fixed.
Yeah, I can look at that.
Okay.
How many
No,
were
yeah,
fixed?
that'd be kind of neat. So this year you bring problems to submit to uTrack. There is a quick link which I'm sure I'm going to provide in the description of this video. So take a look at the description to click on that, explore uTrack a little bit. Do you have? I'm keeping track of the time. We have a couple more minutes. What are your I'm losing the word, but what is your advice to people if they want to submit an issue on uTrack? What is your advice to like maybe submitting a good quality ticket?
Yeah, so a good quality ticket. I already said it, a good title. You also select the metadata. So the type,
Great,
is it a
that's
bug?
a good
Is it a
title.
feature?
Yeah,
Is it
a really
a
good title.
problem? Is it a performance problem, security problem? You have the list.
Yeah.
So you select the affected versions. Also,
Okay.
another thing, if it's not a Kotlin issue, but if it's an IntelliJ ID
Sure.
issue
Yeah.
or Android Studio issue, send it over here. So for Android Studio and IntelliJ, actually, if you go into the menu bar in the ID, in the help menu, you have a submit feedback thing in Android Studio, and in
That's what that's
IntelliJ
for.
ID,
Yeah.
it's also named submit feedback, and there's also submit a bug report. And so you can use that to directly submit an issue about your experience in the IDE. So for example, if you see correct
Wow.
code that compiles but is still marked as red for some reason, and you
Yeah.
haven't found a way to fix it, like you tried the Gradle sync, the Gradle sync worked well, but the code is still red. Unfortunately, that happened to me many times.
Yeah.
Then you can just click submit issue and you tell about the context. And also, yeah, help the people on the other side to reproduce your issue. So if you can, but don't just give like a gigantic project, or no, don't do that. But if you can find what is the smallest amount of information that can help them reproduce the issue, then do that. If it's very large, or if it's like a specific version of an open source project or reproducer, you can also link the permalink. So on GitHub, you go where you have a project that you can reproduce, and you tap Y on your keyboard, and that will translate to the perma link,
Yeah.
which means that if you keep pushing, it will still point to the earlier version. It's like going to the last commit at the time where you press Y, and that can be very helpful for them to reproduce. Yeah, just
Wow,
make.
those are really good tips.
I
I
think that's
had no
it. I
idea.
think that's
Yeah.
it, and then you learn. Yeah, like if it's something is missing, they will ask. At least on your track, I know that they often ask for details when it looks like a serious issue.
Yeah.
So they will just ask you for the information that they are missing if there's
Yeah.
one you type. I think that's it.
Okay. Well, these are really good tips. I'm really looking
Yeah,
forward
sorry.
to going
One
back.
of the
Yeah.
things, don't give up. Even if your first 1, 2, 3, or 10 issues didn't have any intention, keep trying, because maybe the 12th is a very serious issue that might get fixed before all of the previous one you submitted, and might make your life and the life of many other developers easier. So don't give up. Also, that's very
Yeah.
important.
Well, I feel like this is a good place to leave it off of. Oh my gosh, I learned so much myself, like in this chat alone. Thank you so much for. I'm afraid we're kind of at time. Um, thank you so much, Luis, for taking the time to speak. I'm going to make sure that we have all the relevant links and that we capture some of your tidbits so that others like are able to reference it and even explore you track themselves. Thank you so much for your time, Luis. And thank you to the viewers for watching this. It's great to be back with the Chicago Kotlin user channel. We're going to be mostly in person this year, but we'll do sporadic online events like this once in a while as well. Thank you so much, Luis. It was great having you online.
Thank you, Amanda.
All right. Thank you. And take
Thanks
care
you.
to everyone. Until next time.